Hello everyone, welcome to this tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to work on implementing Azure SQL Database based application, and if you were especially studying for AZ 304 303 exam, Microsoft Azure Architect level exam, this lab would be very useful for you. Now we're going to follow this lab that is from the Azure. There is some subtle changes. I think the lab when was written was probably our portal looked a little different. So I'll tell you what needs to be changed from the direction that you have here, but still I would give you this link so you can study and learn some more background information about the lab. So in a nutshell, the lab scenario looks like this. We have a on-prem web application that's developed using .Net for the front end, and at the back end it's using a SQL Server, and we want to move this SQL Server workload to Azure SQL Database, and we really want to use the serverless Azure SQL because it can automatically scale based on demand, and it can also pause itself when there is no demand, so your expense is optimized. And you also have network level based security where it's implemented in a way that you really do not need a site to site or express route connection for this .NET application to access the database on the cloud. So let's see what needs to be done. So really two main objectives: implement the serverless tier of the Azure SQL database that we'll do from the portal, and then configure a .NET Core based console application that uses the database that we're going to create. So here are the main steps. We'll create the Azure SQL database, connect to it and perform some queries. So we will install a sample database when we do this step. We're going to identify the ADO.NET connection information of Azure SQL database and then configure a .NET Core console application. Once we have the application ready, we're going to test the application, configure SQL database firewall, and finally verify. And at the end, if you are not going to use these resources anymore, we're going to remove those resources so that now we are not charging or getting charged for the resources that really not being used. So let's get back to the lab. So the first thing is to create a SQL database, and instead of using SQL, you should be searching Azure SQL. Okay, so let's come back over here, go home, and just search for Azure SQL. Again, remember to do this. Do not choose the SQL databases anymore. Choose the Azure SQL. And once you are here, click on Add to create an instance, and this would look a little different than what you have in the lab. I'm going to use the SQL database and single database resource type. Click on Create, and then I have this view. Now I'm going to follow back their directions again. Database name, I'm going to pick up, put it here, Control V. Resource group, I'm going to use this name that they have suggested in the lab. So create new, put the resource group, and it says your resource group name already allow alphanumeric characters. So do I have a space at the bottom? Yeah, so there is a space, so get rid of the space and then hit OK. For server, I gotta hit the create new, and it gives me this window to the right, and here we're gonna configure it this way: the SQL username and password. Let's get these first, and password, and for the server, I'm just going to take this one, and instead of db1, I'm just going to call it server1. Let's see if this is available to me, and it may take just a minute to figure out if this name is available. And while this is going on, it says it's available, so it's tick mark. I'm gonna say OK, so this red mark should go away, and it did. And over here, configure database. Okay, here you need to click on it. We don't need the provision one, we want the serverless one. Compute resources at auto scale, build per second based on the vCore used. Okay, that's what you want. And for this, make sure your auto pause delay or enable auto pause is allowed. So that's also going to save you some money, and just keep the rest of it, don't change anything, take the default and just hit apply. And we have now configured the compute and store it, and it's telling you over here again is serverless. Okay, go to networking. Public endpoint is fine, and allow Azure services and resources to access the server. Say no, and add client IP, say yes. So that is going to try to take my IP address, and I should be able to connect from my own machine. Then go to the additional setting, and over here click on the sample, and AdventureWorks LT will be created as a sample database. So here make sure to install a sample database. Do not skip this step, because we're going to use the sample database to test if our database is working fine or not. Okay, so let's go back. So we have configured the server names. Okay, we have made sure that it's serverless, and we also made sure enable auto pause is enabled. Then we used a public endpoint to connect to the database. We said Azure services to no. Client IP address, we said yes. Okay, on the additional setting, use existing data sample is what we are doing. And last thing, enable advanced data security. Do you need it? Say not now. So just click on not now, and that should be good enough. So let's look at public endpoint is selected. Everything looks good. I'm just gonna create and review and create, and then hit create, and this one should be able to create the database for me. Okay, so it's now creating the database. It shouldn't take more than 2 minutes. So I'm just gonna wait 2 minutes, pause the video, and be back. And the next thing we were gonna do, connect to the database. And these days from the Azure itself, you can connect to the database using the query editor. So you don't really need to have a big database console application, or MSDB or anything like that to connect to the database. It's very easy. Although it's in a preview mode, it's still powerful, and you can do everything you want. And we're gonna run this query and make sure we're getting results back, and that will prove that our database installation is successful. Our sample database got installed properly, and everything is going very well. Once we do that, we'll move to the next phase of our exercise, and we'll implement a .NET Core console application that uses Azure SQL Database as the data store. Okay, let's come back over here. It's still deploying, so I'm going to pause and be back very soon. Alright everyone, this deployment is now complete. You can look over here, it says directly that it's done. You can also click on the notification bar, and it's going to tell you what happened with your last deployment, plus other deployment as well. This is the one that we're interested in. So at this time, you know how to go to the resource. You can directly click on here, but the lab says from here, go and search for this SQL database, then find it. But what I'm going to suggest, just copy this one, since you already know the database name. You can just simply go here and search for the database name, and it should show up, and just click on it. And over here, here's the query editor window where you need to go and you need to log in, and here provide the password that you have created, hit OK, and it should log you in and should give you a really nice query window where you can start typing some stuff. Since we have a sample database, I am expecting to see some tables in here. So let's give it a second to load the table. While it's loading, we're going to go over here, get the query that we are going to run. Come back. It's still, the table is loading. Not too much concern. So I'm going to paste the query over here, and I'm just going to run it. Okay, and this is at the bottom. It says the query has been successfully ran. So although this is taking a long time, we know that we have a table that is sales LT product category. We have another table, sales LT product, because we are doing all kinds of joins in here, and we are getting the category name and the product name, the top 20 of them, and they all look great. So I know my database installation has been successful and it's working just fine. So let's come back over here. So we are really done with task 1 and task 2. Okay, implement Azure SQL Database. So that's done. So now we have the SQL database that we can manipulate. We need to implement a .NET Core console application that uses Azure SQL Database as their data store. So here we have a whole bunch of tasks. So let's just get started. So the first thing, in the Azure portal on the Azure SQL database we deployed, in the settings section, select the connection string. So that is what we're gonna need to connect to the database. It's if you are used to using SQL database, you know that there gotta be a string that you use to connect to a particular database. So this is what we're gonna do. So settings, then connection string. So come back to the database and let's see, we have where are our settings? Here is the settings and there is the connection string. So click on it and this is fine. Say okay, and here is your connection string. So ADO.NET, JDBC, ODBC, PHP, Go. So you have lots of different options. So I'm just gonna copy this one just by clicking this button, copy to clipboard, and I'm just gonna create a blank word notepad and just put it over here. Okay, so what they're showing, select connection string and note the connection string. So we have done that. So we're done with task 1. Next is to create and configure a .NET Core console application. So now we need to open the Cloud Shell and we're going to use the bash and then we're going to run some commands. So to go to the bash or Cloud Shell, you just click on this icon over here and it's going to give you either the PowerShell or the bash. If it's for the first time, you've never used it, it may ask you to could create a storage account. Just say yes and it will create, and it will probably log you to the PowerShell. If you see blue, that means you are in the PowerShell window. Just you need to come to the bash, just click on the drop down and just select bash and you should see this. So now we need to do some stuff here. So first of all, we're gonna create a directory, mkdir. This is the directory. Then we're gonna get inside the directory by the cd command. So let's just paste those, and now we are inside this directory, right? Previously we were at our home. Now we created this directory. Now this directory is showing up because we are inside this directory at the moment. Now here run the following to create a new application project for .NET Core based app. So if you are again a .NET developer, you probably already know about this nice little command. So we're gonna say .NET new console, and I think so it's now initializing. So let's let it run and give us the project structure for us. And the next thing we need to do in the Cloud Shell pane, use the built-in editor to open and modify CS project file by adding the following XML element. So, and this is what we're going to add under this between the project tag. So let's see if it's done. So it says this is all good. So what I'm going to use code to open that file, and this is the project file that we need to open. So copy that one, paste it, and if I run, hit enter, it should give me a nice little code at the top. So we got it. So under project, this is your project. So under project, we need to add item group. Okay, so let's come back over here, project group, and then let's put it over here, our item group, and just say Control S, and that should save this project. Okay, and then close editor. It's gonna close the editor for us. So we are done with this. Okay, the project file is now created. Now on the Cloud Shell, use the built-in editor to open and modify the program that's here. So next we're gonna do the same thing, but we're gonna open up this particular file. Okay, so come back over here. Again, a code, when I'm doing code, it's really opening the Visual Studio Code editor for us. Okay, then code and paste and hit enter. So this is the default program.cs file that we have. It's opened up for us. Now we're gonna replace this with the content that we have here. So let's copy this one, and let's see. Okay, we have copied this one. Come back over here, get rid of everything that we have, and Control V, and you can read kind of what it's doing. So we do have a void main program, the namespace SQL test, and looks like we have a SQL connection string builder class is here, and looks like here your ADO .NET connection string. So here most likely we have to provide our the string that we copied. So here using SQL connection, so this is creating the connection based on the connection string that we're going to provide, and then we're going to console, we're going to write down something in the console, query data example, this, then we're going to open the connection, we're going to use a string builder to build SB, and then we're going to write something. Our query really we are building using the sb.append, so select top 20 and all that stuff. Then once this query is developed using the string builder object over here, we're going to use a string SQL SB to toString, and then using SQL command we're going to pass this SQL string over here. We're going to pass the string to the connection object that we created and we open, and then using the reader we are going to execute the command, and we're going to store the output in that reader, and then while the reader has some output, we're going to write down what is the output. So it should give us all the rows and everything that we are getting out of this SQL statement. So hopefully that's not too difficult to understand, and here is some catch statement. If you have any errors or something like that, we're gonna get that. So I'm gonna say Control S, so that file is now saved, and again over here I'm gonna say close editor, so that has closed the editor for us. Okay, so let's come back. Leave the editor window open. Oh, it says leave the editor window open in the Azure portal. Oh, we didn't do that. Okay. So that's the reason they're saying. So we said that we're gonna do this, but we didn't do it. So here we need to replace our string. Okay, so let's come back. Here that's what they're saying, right? This string with the value that you have copied, and we also have to provide the password. Okay, so good that we are reading the direction properly. So come back over here, get this string. Once you have the string, come back over here, and inside this I'm gonna paste the string. So that's it. I'm gonna save it, and then I'm gonna look for the password. Where do I need to provide the password? Let's come back over here, switch back to the editor window and replace the placeholder with the value of the connection string. In the connection string you copied into editor, replace the placeholder your password with this password. Okay, so inside the string I must have a password as well. So let's come back over here, let's see your password. Okay, so that's what I need to replace. So verify, come back over here, can look at string. So I'm just looking at this string over here, and I'm looking for the password, your password. So I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to replace with the password that we are using. Now we can save the program and close the editor. So we have configured the program.cs file. We have provided the connection string and the password. Now it should be able to connect to that. So now it comes down to test the .NET application. So we're going to run this command .NET restore, and let's see what happens. So now it's running, and it said restore completed. It didn't throw any errors, so that sounds good. So once this is done, we're going to run this application by running .NET run, and let's see what happens this time. Okay, so once this is running, let's go back and keep reading. No, the execution of the console app will trigger an error. Okay, so and this is why, because the connection from IP address assigned to the virtual machine running the Cloud Shell session must be explicitly allowed. Yeah, so when we created the database, we did not allow the IP address of that Azure IP address to use our database. So let's see if it has thrown an error already, and look at that. So it's saying client connection error, and so it's not allowed. So cannot open request to login client IP address. This is not allowed to access the server. So to enable the access, use the Windows Azure Management Portal or run sp-set firewall rule on the master database to create a firewall rule for this IP address or address range. Okay, so let's see what do we need to do. So to be able to access, we need to configure the Azure SQL Database firewall. So what we want to do, we want to identify the IP address. So it's already here. It told us this IP address is not allowed, and there was IP address 13.66.136. So just hit enter and run this curl command and make sure that you get the same IP address. So this is just a curl command where you're just running to get the current IP address, and it's going through some complicated SED type style formatting of your output to get to the IP address. So now you have the IP address with you. What you need to do, on the database page, we are going to go and we're going to go to the set the firewall page. Okay, so let's just copy this, don't forget this IP address, and over here the firewall is somewhere over here. So sometimes I just search firewall, is it under configure? So let's see over here, make sure overview in the toolbar, select set firewall. Okay, so that is probably, so let's go back over here and right here. Sometimes some of these icons, they're not on the left sidebars, left blades, they're somewhere over here. So here you just need to click on the set firewall, and here we need to provide the IP address most likely. So let's see what they're saying. So on the set the following entries and select save. So rule name Cloud Shell, start IP and end IP is the same IP that we have identified. So start IP, end IP, that's the IP of the Cloud Shell, and we're going to use the rule as Cloud Shell. So let's add that, and let's see, is there anything I need to do? Okay, so I got that rule now with me. I can save this, so that should update this firewall rule. And let's see if I need to change anything. Obviously it means lab purposes only, since the IP address will change after you restart the Cloud Shell. So remember that this is really for the lab. So if you know your connection, where you're connecting it from, it should be a static IP address and shouldn't change once you configure this one. So once we have that configured, so now let's rerun this and see at this time if we can run our application from here. So last time it threw an error, said yeah, your IP is not allowed. Okay, look at that. Now I do not have any errors at all, and if you remember, we have got the output from our SQL statement just fine. Alright, so come back over here. So that proves and that shows how you can use this control app to query your SQL database, how to use the connection string, provide the password, and move your on-prem database to the Azure SQL database. That is serverless, you have no headache, that can auto scale, that can be paused. All right, at this time I'm going to stop the lab and I'm going to run this command to get rid of this particular resource group and everything inside that. But I would like you to do this to gain more understanding. So go back to your Azure database, okay, that you have created, Azure SQL, and this is the server and the database. Pay some investigation on both. Look at your server, what kind of server got created. Just pay some attention to all these plates, and then go into the database one more time. Look at some more features. Look at geo-replication. Look at some other stuff. Look at logs. Look at monitoring, intelligent performance, some metric data. Okay, just to gain some more experience and be familiarize what is the automatic tuning is another interesting feature. If you very quickly improve the performance of your database, you can turn that on. So spend some time and learn, and if you're really studying for the exam, good luck. Hopefully this will get you started with playing with the Azure SQL databases. Do it yourself. And again, thanks for watching. If you like the video, please give me a like, press the like button, please subscribe and leave your valuable comments so I can make better videos next time. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.